There comes a moment in some relationships that feels almost unreal. Not when the arguments happen, not when the distance begins, not even when the messages get shorter and the energy changes. The real moment comes later, quietly, after the noise, after the explanations, after the last attempt to fix what only one person was trying to hold together. It happens when she realizes you are not just upset. You are not just pulling back for a day. You are not waiting in the same emotional place where she left you. You are truly gone. And that realization can carry a weight she never expected, because sometimes people do not feel the depth of a connection while it is still available to them. Sometimes they only begin to understand it when the warmth is no longer there, when the attention is no longer automatic, when the emotional safety they once leaned on is no longer within reach. What felt familiar starts to feel rare. What felt ordinary starts to feel unforgettable. And the strange part is this: when someone realizes they can no longer return to the version of you that was always there, something shifts inside them. Not always loudly, not always visibly, but deeply. That is when the story changes. Because what she does next is often not just about missing you. It is about finally seeing what your presence really meant and what your absence now forces her to face. At first, she may not show it. On the outside, life can look normal. She may still laugh. She may still post. She may still answer people with the same calm tone. She may even seem fine in ways that confuse you. That is why so many people misunderstand what emotional realization looks like. They expect tears to be public. They expect regret to arrive with immediate honesty. But in many situations, that is not how it happens. Sometimes realization arrives in silence. It slips in during ordinary moments. A quiet drive, a long night, a familiar song, a restaurant she once visited with you, a message thread she said she did not care about anymore, but still never deleted. It comes when there is no performance left, no pride to protect in front of other people, no distraction strong enough to drown out memory. And memory can be powerful, not because it always brings back the big moments, but because it often brings back the small ones. The way you listened when she was overwhelmed. The way you noticed when something felt off before she said a word. The consistency of your effort. The comfort of knowing you were there. The safety of your attention. Those little things do not always look dramatic while they are happening. But after they are gone, they can become the very things that echo the loudest. That is when she may start to feel the difference between being desired and being deeply cared for. Because attraction is easy to replace on the surface. Attention can be found almost anywhere. Noise is everywhere. But emotional steadiness is different. Genuine presence is different. Being understood without needing to overperform is different. And once that kind of connection disappears, the absence does not feel empty in a simple way. It feels specific. She does not just miss someone. She misses your way of showing up. That is why the first thing that often happens when she realizes you are truly gone is not dramatic action. It is emotional comparison. The present starts being measured against the past, even if she never admits it out loud. What once felt normal begins to stand out. Maybe she notices that new conversations feel lighter but not deeper. Maybe she sees that someone else can give compliments but not comfort. Maybe she finds attention but not patience. Maybe she experiences company but not peace. And that contrast can be unsettling because it forces a person to look at what they overlooked when it was still theirs to value. This is where the heart starts telling truths that pride tried to hide. Because when access disappears, perception changes. The person who used to feel predictable starts to feel rare. The one who was always available starts to seem irreplaceable. The energy she once assumed would always be there suddenly becomes something she can no longer reach. And human nature responds strongly to what is no longer easy to touch. Sometimes she may revisit old memories more than she expected. Not because she planned to, not because she wants to lose control, but because the mind naturally returns to what carried emotional weight, a place, a phrase you always used, the way you made hard moments feel softer, the way your presence turned ordinary days into something safe and steady. In those moments, she may begin to understand that it was not just your love she felt. It was your consistency, your emotional reliability, your willingness to stay open even when things were complicated. That kind of realization can be uncomfortable because it asks a difficult question. Did she only recognize your value after losing direct access to it? And if the answer is even partly yes, that truth can stay with her longer than she wants. Then another layer begins. She may start to notice the silence. Not just the silence of missing texts or fewer calls, but the silence of no longer being emotionally pursued by you. That silence can feel different from rejection. Rejection still contains energy. Anger still contains attachment. Chasing still keeps a bond alive. But calm distance creates a different kind of impact. It leaves a person alone with their own thoughts. And in many situations, that is where the real emotional work begins. When you stop chasing, she may become curious in ways she was not before. Not always because she suddenly wants everything back in a pure and perfect way, but because certainty is gone. She may wonder if you still think about her. Then she may realize that is not the real question. The real question is whether you still need her in the same way. And if the answer feels like no, that can shake something deep inside. Because many people are prepared to be missed. Fewer are prepared to be released. When someone feels your emotional attachment loosening for real, they may react by checking the door they once thought would remain open. That does not always mean direct contact. Sometimes it means watching from a distance. Sometimes it means asking about you through mutual connections. Sometimes it means finding reasons to revisit old spaces. Sometimes it means a message that looks casual but carries more emotion underneath than the words reveal. A simple "hope you're doing well" can sometimes hold a lot more than those 5 words. Not always, but often enough. Because what she may be trying to understand is not just whether you are available. She may be trying to understand whether she still has a place in your emotional world. And that becomes even more intense if your energy has changed. If you are no longer proving your worth. If you are no longer explaining what should have been obvious. If you are no longer begging for clarity from someone who kept giving confusion. If you are no longer collapsing every time the connection feels uncertain. That transformation is hard to ignore. People feel it. Especially those who once saw your softness and assumed it would always remain attached to them in the same way. There is another reason this hits hard. When someone knows they had your heart, they often remember the relationship through that emotional security. They remember that you cared. They remember that you stayed. They remember that no matter how distant things became, some part of you was still reachable. That can become part of the emotional structure they rely on without fully admitting it. But when that structure is gone, they may begin to feel the emotional cost of what they did not protect. That is when small moments start returning with surprising force. The morning check-ins, the random support, the way you remembered details that mattered to her, the calm you brought during stressful days, the effort you gave without turning everything into a transaction, the familiar routines that once seemed so ordinary they almost disappeared into the background. Funny how the heart works. It can overlook a steady flame while it is burning, then shiver in the cold once it is gone. And here's where things grow even deeper. Sometimes she does not only miss what you gave, she misses who she was allowed to be around you. That matters. Because real connection is not just about receiving love. It is about feeling emotionally safe enough to soften, safe enough to be imperfect, safe enough to be seen without constantly defending yourself. If you gave that kind of space, then your absence may create more than loneliness. It may create a mirror, one that shows her how rare that emotional atmosphere really was. That can lead to regret, not always dramatic regret, not always a confession, but an internal one. The kind that arrives when life keeps moving, yet a certain peace no longer comes with it. The kind that makes someone realize that chemistry alone was never the whole story. That genuine care is harder to replace than excitement. That emotional steadiness matters more than ego admits in the moment. And once that truth enters, another thought often follows. Has he moved on? That question can be sharper than people realize, because if she senses that you are no longer emotionally waiting in the same place, then the story changes from "he still cares" to "I may have actually lost him." That difference is heavy. It can stir urgency. It can stir nostalgia. It can stir a new respect she failed to show before. It can even stir a desire to reconnect, not because everything has suddenly become healthy, but because loss makes value visible. Still, this is the part many people get wrong. They think the goal is to make someone suffer. They think the lesson is about creating regret on purpose. They think winning means becoming unforgettable so the other person feels haunted forever. But that is not real power. Real power is quieter than that. Real power is when your healing becomes so honest that you stop building your life around whether someone finally understands your worth. Real power is when your peace matters more than their delayed realization. Real power is when their regret, if it comes, no longer controls your identity. Because this was never supposed to be about making her break. It was supposed to be about you becoming whole. That is the shift many people do not expect. You begin this journey wondering what she will feel when you are gone. But if you stay with the lesson long enough, You discover a better question. Who are you becoming now that you no longer abandon yourself to be loved? That changes everything. Because now the silence means something different. Now the empty space is not just loss. It is room. Room for clarity. Room for dignity. Room for your nervous system to rest. Room for a version of you that does not have to chase affection to feel valuable. And once that transformation begins, you stop looking at the past the same way. You see how often you reached for crumbs and called it connection. You see how often you explained your heart to someone who benefited from your loyalty but could not meet you with the same depth. You see how often you confused endurance with love. That awareness can hurt, but it also frees you. Because the old version of you was always trying to secure the bond, trying to predict the mood, trying to earn reassurance, trying to remain patient while your own needs waited in the corner. That version of you may have checked your phone too often, replayed conversations too late at night, accepted mixed signals, and called it hope. He may have thought that if he just loved better, stayed calmer, proved more, sacrificed more, things would finally become mutual. But deep down, he was exhausted. He was not weak. He was simply trying to be chosen by someone while forgetting to choose himself. The new version starts differently. Not louder, not colder, not cruel, just clearer. He stops begging for what should be freely given. He stops treating inconsistency like mystery. He stops trying to rescue potential at the cost of his own peace. He learns that love without reciprocity can slowly damage the part of you that once trusted your own value. So he begins to rebuild that value from the inside. Slowly, he keeps promises to himself, honors boundaries he used to explain away. He invests in habits that make him stronger. He becomes more careful with where his energy goes. He learns how to sit with loneliness without running back to confusion just because it is familiar. That is growth. And growth does not arrive all at once in a perfect speech or one dramatic exit. It arrives when you start noticing that your mornings feel lighter, when you stop needing a message to feel okay, when your confidence is no longer built on being wanted by one specific person, when you can remember someone with honesty without collapsing into old patterns. Bitterness seeks revenge. Growth seeks peace. That line matters because many people confuse healing with punishment. They think the strongest thing you can do is make the other person hurt the way you hurt. But pain passed back and forth never creates freedom. It only creates a longer chain. Peace breaks the chain. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away without needing to be misunderstood as the villain or remembered as the hero. You simply leave with your self-respect intact. You let your absence tell the truth your words could not force them to hear. And then you keep building. That is when your presence changes, even from a distance. There is something powerful about a person who no longer moves from desperation. A person who still has depth, still has warmth, still has love to give, but no longer offers it where it will not be protected. A person who has felt heartbreak without becoming hard. A person who chooses dignity over emotional chaos. That energy is rare. And yes, she may feel it. She may sense that you are no longer the same man who once waited at the edge of uncertainty, hoping she would finally decide. She may notice that your silence feels grounded now, not wounded in the same way. She may realize that what left was not just your attention. What left was access to a version of you that loved very deeply and would have stayed very long if only the connection had been honored. That realization can stay with someone, because sincere love is easy to underestimate when it is patient. People often notice loud passion first, but later they remember steady devotion. They remember the person who cared without performance, the one who brought emotional safety, not just intensity, the one who was present in a way that made life softer. And if she realizes she lost that, then what she does next may come from many places. Memory, regret, curiosity, longing, reflection, maybe even a desire to return. But by then, the most important thing is no longer what she feels. It is what you know. You know what it cost you to keep shrinking for unstable love. You know how heavy it felt to keep proving your heart. You know how much peace you lost trying to keep a connection alive alone. And now you know something else. Your worth never needed her late understanding to become real. That is the emotional climax. So many people spend months trying to reach the day you truly understand that being overlooked did not make you less valuable. The day you realize that someone failing to appreciate your depth did not reduce your depth. The day you stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And start saying, I was always enough. It just was not being met with the same readiness. That is freedom. Not because the past no longer matters, but because it no longer has the authority to define you. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can love someone and still walk away. You can wish them well and still never return to the version of you that accepted less than peace. That is maturity. And here is the truth at the center of all of this. When you heal, you become unavailable to the kind of love that once broke you. Not because you are numb, but because you are awake. Not because you hate, but because you understand. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you finally started valuing your feelings enough to protect them. Your healing is the closure. Read that again in your heart. Your healing is the closure. If this speaks to something you have lived through, write, "I choose peace" in the comments. Share the part of this journey that changed you most. And if you want more honest conversations about relationships, emotional strength, self-worth, and healing, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because in the end, the lesson is not that someone may regret losing you. The deeper lesson is that you should never have to disappear completely for your value to be seen. Healthy love does not depend on distance to create appreciation. It does not need silence to reveal respect. It does not wait until the connection is broken to suddenly understand the worth of the person who is giving their heart. Healthy relationships are built differently. They are built on mutual effort, mutual respect, mutual appreciation, honest communication, emotional safety. They are built by two people who do not just enjoy each other when things are easy, but who also protect the connection when life becomes heavy. Two people who know that love is not only a feeling, it is responsibility. It is consistency. It is care made visible through action. And if that was missing, then your decision to step away was not failure. It was wisdom. Yes, she may think about you. Yes, she may remember more than she expected. Yes, she may realize your absence carries a meaning she did not understand when your presence was freely given. But your life cannot stay paused waiting for that realization. Your path now is bigger than being missed. It is about becoming a man who no longer bargains with his own worth. A man who can love deeply without losing himself. A man who understands that peace is not loneliness and self-respect is not pride. A man who no longer confuses emotional struggle with emotional destiny. And one day, whether she comes back, stays silent, or simply becomes a chapter that taught you what love should never cost, you will see the truth clearly. The real victory was never in making someone regret losing you. The real victory was learning not to lose yourself trying to be loved.